kind of the next issue for us to address is as the application process, the statute sets forth that we have to have certain certifications. There's a mechanism to disengage the technology. There's a visual indicator that the technology is engaged. There's an alert for the operator. The vehicle is capable of coming to a complete stop. DMV has a lot of experience in registering vehicles and issuing people's driver's licenses. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an engineer. So the next question becomes, is that something that we should look to third-party certifying, or is that something that we should look to the manufacturer as being able to, in that application, do a self-certification, like you mentioned that NHTSA allows?
I think it has to be self-certification, and we'll let Ron get to that because he comes from NHTSA. I think that so if you take like the smog control world, smog is something that it makes sense for third parties to test. It's binary. They can test whether a certain amount of CO2 is coming from a tailpipe. To try to get a whole new industry to emerge. So if you need a whole new industry to emerge to test autonomous technology, the expertise probably doesn't exist really. And in fact, you would create a second problem for yourself. How does this whole third-party system work? But if you have companies who are self-certifying, who have their financial stability and their liability and their reputation on the line, that's something that works. And when you add to that the insurance requirements and the fact that they will be having a bond in place and massive liability for product liability, you have a system that works pretty well. And in addition, I mean, going back to the product liability, again, just like any car company, when something bad happens, the company's at risk. And so every company has a great incentive to test like crazy prior to certifying that they can do something.
Excellent.
So I just, I did work at NHTSA for 10 years, and I ran the vehicle safety program. And in that program, in the U.S. regulatory system for almost all consumer products except for some of those regulated by FDA, which are drugs and cosmetics and medical devices, or EPA for pesticides, all products are regulated in the United States are basically self-certified. And what the federal agencies do is do compliance follow-up testing. And in the case of the auto industry at the federal level, which is heavily regulated at the federal level, is that the companies self-certify, and then behind that, the government, NHTSA, actually collects, buys vehicles and tests them to determine whether or not they meet the certification requirements. If they don't, they have to recall all those products from the marketplace and fix them. And so with that in mind, it really does put the burden on the companies to ensure that they're getting it right. And so it seems to me that that kind of process would make the most sense here, where companies take on the burden and responsibility of ensuring by certification that it meets the requirements, and that the DMV would have a process by which it would do compliance or follow-up testing to ensure, you do spot testing or whatever to ensure that it complies. The lack of compliance is a major deal for the manufacturer. And it seems to me that that process, which has sort of worked well throughout the U.S. regulatory system, would be one for vehicles that makes sense in this sphere, for at least in my way of thinking about it.
On a state level, specifically DMV, we don't have a lot of experience in testing vehicles. And so when you talk about a follow-up compliance type of testing, is that something that you would see on a national level, or is that some form of expertise that you would see that DMV would need to develop?
Yeah, so the big worry for companies that are going to operate throughout the country is that there not be a variety of standards. I think NHTSA would probably at some point, may in fact issue some standards at some point which would preempt any state regulation if they're dealing with this in the same area. But until that time happens, it seems to me that what would really be dangerous is an emergence of different requirements for the same technology that creates barrier to entry from state to state. So interstate commerce is a vital part of operating and in the United States for autonomous vehicles as well as any other vehicles.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I believe I saw someone right behind you. So.
Hi, Ross Good, also with Chrysler, Steve Psycho's colleague. It's also important to remember the intent of this bill. The intent of this bill was to set California up as a leader, right? As a place where manufacturers could come and test this because we have some rules set in place. If we make the rules so prescriptive and so you can't do this, you can't do that, there's no sense for ever testing in this situation or that situation, it's easy for manufacturers just to go across the border to Nevada and test there, or Florida, where they also have autonomous vehicle laws, or Michigan, or, you know, any other one of 15 other states that are trying to do the same thing. So I appreciate the tough spot the DMV's in, but keep in mind that the point of this law was to draw manufacturers here so we could test here in a safe environment where the rules are well understood, so that it's good for everybody, and it draws the type of critical thinking that we need to develop this technology into California, not to drive it away. So that's a caution that I hope we all agree with.
And I think we understand that, but there's always often a difficult balance that we as a regulator face. You've approved something, it crashed and killed the Capital Christian Choir on the way to Tsunami Relief Concert. GDMV, are you responsible for that?
Right, exactly.
Who's responsible for that?
Right.
And so at least what we would want to do, when we think as a regulator, not only is it, you know, do you have the financial responsibility, but are we taking a position where we've basically put a rubber stamp on something as being safe?
Right.
And so when we talk about developing the regulations, we want to kind of keep that balance in mind.
Yeah. And absolutely, as automobile manufacturers, you know, our reputation is the most important thing, and I think as Steve said, and some of our colleagues at Google also mentioned, you know, safety has to be first, and it has to be the most important factor in everything we do. So it's not like any manufacturer is trying to skirt around some safety rules or anything, but my point is just, the idea is to bring the technology here, make California the leader, make it so that the rest of the world comes here, because the DMV has set up rules that make it fair for everybody, and we can really move forward, rather than set up such a prescriptive system that we say, okay, well, we don't want to come to California because the rules are so restrictive. So
But you can
I
also see.
appreciate the tough
No, no,
spot
no,
you're in.
I'm just saying, you can also see that the rules that we develop may become a template for what occurs in other states.
Exactly, so, yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.